of the Books readers in Traverse City, Michigan. I'm author Shelley Pearsall, and I'm here to talk with you about things seen from above. See you soon. Welcome to my house here in Akron, Ohio. First of all, I want to say congratulations to all the participants in the Battle of the Books 2021. I know it's been a challenging and very unique year in Battle of the Books history, but I want to congratulate all of you on the hard work that you put in all the studying to learn all the details in the books, to come up with your creative team names and the slogans. And I especially loved the big art. The snowmen and the giant book in the snow and the rocket ship and the designs made out of feathers and stones. Just wonderful creativity, and I really appreciate you taking Joey's ideas and his talent and creating your own art from that. So thank you for all the creativity you put into your projects. Now, I know that your families have been a big help in preparing for Battle of the Books, and so I want to share a little bit about things seen from above with your families. I know not all of them have read all the books, so I'm going to give a little background on the story first, and then give you a little sneak peek into where some of the ideas in the story came from. And I have a little journey that we're also going to take. All right, so for family members that haven't read Things Seen from Above yet, the main character, well, the book has two main characters, I should say. One of them is Joey Bird, and he's a fourth grader with a very unusual gift. The other main character in the book is April Boxler, and she's a sixth grader, and she discovers Joey's unusual gift when she decides to volunteer during the fourth grade recess as a buddy bench volunteer. Now, of course, Joey's gift, all of you know, is the ability to see things from a bird's eye view. In fact, sometimes he even imagines himself as if he was a bird, or is a bird, as if he's Aquila Audax, that giant eagle. So his visual gift allows him to do some pretty amazing things, but it also causes him to struggle with some subjects in school, especially reading, because not only does he see the world from above, he also sees letters from above. And so that makes reading very difficult because every letter is three-dimensional, and so when he sees it from above, it's really hard to figure out what letter or what word it is. He also has trouble making friends, and so he's a lonely character at the beginning of the story. So in order to cope with his loneliness, he starts to make these giant designs on his school playground at recess. So where did I get the idea for Joey and the idea of making giant designs on a school playground? Well, I get ideas for books from all different places, but this book happened to be inspired by someone in my own family. And if you read the author's note, you know the inspiration was my nephew Miles, who lives in Traverse City. So when he was in elementary school, just like Joey, he sometimes struggled with subjects in school. He struggled with making friends. And so during recess, he started to make these giant designs on the school playground. And of course, you saw in the author's note the photograph that inspired this book as well. So here's a picture of one of the giant designs that my nephew Miles created. Now, when you look at this design, one of the things that you notice, first of all, is the loneliness, because nobody's hanging out with him, nobody's paying attention to this amazing face that he's created, but you also notice his creativity and his sense of humor. So I wanted to make sure that that was also part of Joey's character. Here's another photo where you can see my nephew Miles doing one of his spirals around a tree on the school playground. And then this tree, for those of you that remember in the story, the Yoda tree or the 2003 tree, this was the inspiration for that tree. Now, as you look at this photograph, you may notice that it seems, the playground at least, seems a little familiar. Although the book is set in a town called Marshallville, Michigan, which is supposed to be near Battle Creek. Actually, I took a lot of ideas from Traverse City. So I thought it'd be fun to, I guess you'd say, put on our virtual wings right now. And we are going to take a journey from Akron, Ohio to Traverse City and zoom in on a couple of the places in Traverse City that inspired some of the places in the book. So as we zoom in, one of the first things you're going to see is TCAP's Montessori playground. And this was the playground that inspired the one in the book and also inspired my nephew Miles. So this is where he created his big art. If you look to the side, you'll also see a football field. Of course, all of you guys know the football field. But that was the football field that inspired the one where Joey creates the giant eagle and tiger in the story. Now, that's a little overview of Traverse City, but I have a special guest that I would like to stop in and visit in Traverse City. So we're going to take a quick visit with the star of the book, and here he is. Miles, I'd like you to wave hello to all of the Battle of the Books participants and family members in Traverse City.
Hi.
So Miles is in Traverse City. As you heard, he was in elementary school when I started this book. You can see he's grown up a lot now, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his life now. Miles, why don't you give us a little insight into your life now and what your future holds? What are some of your goals and dreams?
So I'm a senior in high school now, and I just got admitted to the college I wanted. So I've grown up a lot since the events in the book.
How would you say that you're similar to Joey? Because, as the author, I always take a little license with what I write and put some of my own imagination in. So how are you similar to the character that I created, and how are you different than the Joey in the book?
Well, one thing me and Joey have in common is he's pretty shy in the book. He doesn't talk to a lot of people, and he keeps to himself, and yeah, he's sort of in his own little world. And I can relate to Joey a lot in that way. I would usually keep to myself, and I wouldn't talk to a lot of people in 6th grade. And I was a lot in my own thoughts.
And I remember in elementary school, sometimes reading was tough for you. Would you say that that's something that you, that's really changed for you and you're more comfortable with reading now?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because at the time, when I struggled with reading, I didn't really have any idea that that was a problem. Like, I sort of thought that everyone struggled with reading as much as I did. I didn't have any sort of comparison. I was just sort of in my own world, I guess, like Joey would have been, where I would notice other people would get better grades on things, but it didn't bother me that much.
Right.
But yeah, I have grown a lot and gotten significantly better at reading and writing than before.
Yeah, and obviously in the story, Joey moves away. He does that big work of art on the, in the stadium. So those were things that came from my imagination that don't really connect with, your own experiences. You didn't go on to do some of the things that Joey does in the story.
No.
So how does it feel to have a book written about you? And what do you hope that readers take away from the story?
Well, it's an interesting feeling. It's very flattering. When I was in elementary school, I never thought that this story would ever get as big as it did. Like, I was just, doing my thing on the playground, and I was just trying to cope with my emotions and what I was going through. So I never knew that this would get as big as it did, and there would be a story based off of events that happened to me in real life. And what was the second part of the question?
And what do you hope kids would take away? What do you hope the readers and Battle of the Books take away from reading Things Seen from Above and from your own experiences and story? What do you hope they take away or they learn about you and from your experiences?
Well, I hope kids don't underestimate the quieter kids that are doing these things in the background. Like, I remember on the playground when I first started doing these big designs, not a lot of people noticed or cared, or they would just walk over it, or they'd bump into me, or, nobody really seemed to notice what I was going through. So I think part of making those big designs and patterns was I was hoping somebody would, ask me and talk to me about what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I just hope that with this book, more people would try to see what was up with that, kid in the back who was making weird patterns or doing art or whatever.
And maybe reach out and become a friend.
Yeah.
Kids we don't always notice.
Because that's what I was always, trying to find at 6th grade is, a friend, because I was so alone.
Yeah, somebody to reach out. It has been so much fun talking to you this morning. I really appreciate you taking time because I know you've got a lot of homework to do and a lot of things on your schedule. So
Yep.
you're a busy person, Miles, but I appreciate you talking to all the Battle of the Books readers today. Have a great rest of the day. We're going to actually zoom back to my office now because I know the Battle of the Books kids have a bunch of questions for me. So bye-bye, Miles.
Bye-bye.
Whoa, we're back in my office now. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed meeting Miles. You're actually the first group that has ever met, first readers to ever meet Miles and have the chance to talk with him. So thank you so much for having me as part of your Battle of the Books. Congratulations to both teams. I can't believe it was a tie. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Well, I have a lot of things I want to share in the office here. I know you guys have a ton of questions, but I'm going to stretch for a minute and just take you around the office really fast so you can see, and I can see the questions are already flying in here. So you can see a little of my office, and you may even have more questions after you actually see the office too. So I am talking with you from my office, which is in Akron, Ohio, as you saw in our little journey. I'm lucky because like all of you, I live near a big park. I know you live near Sleeping Bear, Traverse City's near Sleeping Bear Dunes. I live near the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, which is the only national park in Ohio. So I have to give you a look out the window of my office. So we're going to take a quick little, see if I can get the computer here. All right, so we'll take a quick little journey here over to the window. So there's the view out my office window on a sunny Ohio day. However, you'll notice that my desk does not face the window. So that's so I can, focus on what I'm doing, because otherwise I would, spend all the time looking out the window. But I'm lucky I have a fireplace in my office. Right above the fireplace, you'll see the words Carpe Diem. And that means seize the day. It's one of my favorite sayings. And then up above on the mantelpiece, I call this my office cruise. So you'll see lots of fun creatures on the mantle. And if you look closely, you might see a sloth at the end. See him there? So I'll let you think about why I might have a sloth as my office mascot. What would a sloth have to do with writing? Okay, so here's the desk where I wrote Things Seen from Above. And then right above the desk, you can see a whole bunch of notes from kids and readers. So I keep these above my desk because they inspire me to keep writing. They remind me of who I write for, and they just make me feel great. So, so you can see a lot of that right above the desk. All right, so there are some special things in the office. Of course, every author's office needs to have books. So you can see a lot of books. Whoa, okay. But there's some special things that I'd like to point out on these shelves. First of all, I have an office villain, and I want to be sure and show you this. I don't know if you'll recognize this office villain, but your parents and grandparents might. So this is Nellie Olson from the Little House on the Prairie series. So that was a series that I watched as a kid, and she was one of the characters who wasn't really that nice. And I had the chance to meet the actress who portrayed her in the TV series. So I have an autographed copy of Nellie Olson. Let's see, what else? Oh, this is a funny note in my office. I'll see if you guys can see this. I'm taking a mouse for a drive. So sometimes I put quirky, funny things up, and that little note was from my husband, Mike, because we live near a national park. Sometimes we get mice in our house. And I'm a very soft-hearted person, so I don't like to kill mice. And so what we do is we capture them in a little trap, and then we take them somewhere else in the park. We take them for a little drive and let them go. So that little note was my husband, Mike, saying that he was taking the mouse for a drive. But the most special thing in this office, and I want to be sure and share this because I know so many of you have grandparents who helped you out in preparing for Battle of the Books. Some of your grandparents and parents and aunts and uncles may be watching right now, but this is the most special thing in my office. And this is a note that my grandpa wrote me when I was 7 or 8 years old. And it says, "To my granddaughter, who someday will be a known author."
So my grandpa Pearsall was the first person to read my stories back when I was, 7 or 8 years old. And he wrote me that note, and his belief in me and his willingness to be the first reader is the reason why I'm an author today. And so parents and grandparents, your influence, your support makes so much difference. So I know there's tons of questions flying in here. So I'm going to come back over to my chair and answer some of your questions. And again, if you notice something else as I was walking around that you're curious about, feel free to ask. All right, Ben, do you want to help me out?
Yeah,
with
so I'm
first
looking,
questions here.
if anyone has a question, feel free to use the Q&A function in Zoom. It's at the bottom right side of your screen. We have about, a bunch of questions coming in. First question we have for you, Shelley, is what was your favorite part of writing the book?
I think my favorite part was the fact that I had to, in order to imagine the world the way Joey saw the world, I had to climb up on like furniture and chairs and look down at things in order to see the world the way he does. And so it's kind of fun trying to picture the world the same way, because I don't have the same gift that my nephew Miles has. So that was kind of cool. And even I can show you this, even drawing some of his the art that maybe Joey was going to do in the story. I did a lot of brainstorming. So here's an example of where I was brainstorming some of the things that Joey possibly could draw on the school playground. So that was fun.
Oh, excellent. And we have a question here from Juju Pine that says, what inspired April Boxler? Also, she loves your spiral earrings.
Somebody noticed. Yay. Yes, I was into this. I have to have the earrings that match the book. So the inspiration for April, I have to say there's a lot about April that is similar to the way I was as a sixth grader. I have to admit that I did have an interest in wild foods, and I did force my family to try a cattail once. So, some of those ideas for April came from my own experiences. I also interviewed sixth graders now and asked them a bunch of questions about what their life is like, so that I could make sure that my character was current. And so I actually had lunch with a group of sixth graders and then just quizzed them about their life as a sixth grader. And a lot of their ideas, like green chickens, came from those sixth graders.
Oh, excellent. And Lisa asks, first there's two things. She says, I read Trouble Don't Last not too long ago. Is that your book that won the Historical Fiction Award? Also, are there any other of your books inspired by real people?
Great questions. Trouble Don't Last was my first book, and it did win the Scott Odell Medal. All the books that I've written combine fact and fiction. So I really like to take something real and then put it with my own imagination. I've been that kind of a reader and writer, I should say, since I was a kid. The very first book that I tried to get published, I was 13 years old. So I was a seventh grader.
Oh,
and
wow.
I wrote a story about a family escaping from Vietnam. They were refugees. And the reason why I picked that topic is that it was in the news. That particular topic was in the news when I was a seventh grader. There were families trying to escape from the country of Vietnam after the Vietnam War. So I took what I was reading in the newspaper, and then I created my own fictional story about a family trying to get to freedom in the United States. So it's really something I've done ever since I started trying to get published as a 13-year-old. I love to mix fact and fiction.
Oh, right. And Heather wants to know, how long does it take to write a book? And Deanna wants to know, what is the favorite book that you've written?
All right. Somebody had to ask me, how long does it take to write a book? You're going to make me get a little bit of workout here today. Well, I'm going to show you that. So we're going to turn my camera a little bit here. Let's see. I can get this in the video. All right. So this is just half of the rough draft stack for Things Seen from Above. So here, and let's see if I can get a little closer so you can see the whole stack together. That is the whole stack of rough drafts for Things Seen from Above. That's about 3 years of work. So you remember how I showed you the sloth in the corner of my office? Actually, it's right over my shoulder. There's my sloth. The reason why the sloth is my office mascot is because I'm a pretty slow writer. And I change, obviously you can tell by all those drafts, I change what I'm writing a lot and I move words around. In fact, you can even see that on the top. Let me show you on the top page here. This is from Things Seen from Above. This is just one page. Look at all those changes. So about 3 years to go from what's in my mind to what you read in the book. Okay, another question.
And of all the books you've written, do you have a favorite?
Oh, favorite. Books are like kids. And so if I say I have a favorite, the other ones are like, but what about me? So I don't want to offend any of the other books by saying which is my favorite. But I will say that I loved being able to put the art ideas into Things Seen from Above and to bring Miles's story out through Joey. So it's definitely one that's close to my heart for sure.
And if you don't include the books you've written, what's your favorite book?
Oh, all-time favorite. Oh, yes. That's hard to pick. I'm looking over my bookshelves now because a lot of
maybe giving us a top 3 would be great.
Yeah, top 3. I'm going to go with let's see, Holes by Louis Sekar, one of my all-time favorite books. I'm going to say Moonbird, which is a nonfiction book by Philip Hoos. It's about the migration of a bird, which doesn't sound exciting, but trust me, it's like one of the best books ever. Moonbird, Philip Hoos. And third, I'm going to pick the second Harry Potter book.
Ooh, that is a good one.
But there's about 15 more that I could put on that list.
Juju wants to know, how old were you when you started writing?
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've loved stories and storytelling. My first book was written in first grade, and it was only 4 pages. It didn't look like, Things Seen from Above. And I can even tell you the title of that first grade book. It was called, wait for this, School. And the first sentence I remember, I go to school. So I had a long way to go to become a published author, but I want to show you because I do have some of those stories that I wrote in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, really. And I will confess that I did not write in an office that had a fireplace and a window that looked out on the national park. When I was in 4th grade, I used to write in my bedroom closet. And the reason why I wrote in my bedroom closet is because I thought writers needed to have their own space, and we had a pretty small house. And so I thought the best place, that I could have my own quiet place and creative space was my bedroom closet. So when I was a 4th grader, I moved into my bedroom closet, and that's where I would do all my little stories. And my parents worried about me a lot. The other kids were out playing sports, and I was sitting in my closet writing stories, and they had no idea how this was going to turn out. Oh. But let me show you some of those closet stories because I have them. Hang on 1 minute. All right, here they are. And this one was picked just for the Little House and the Big Books. Did I get that name right? I love the Little House on the Prairie series. And so I have a lot of a Little House on the Prairie inspired stories. So this is one of them called The Early Settlers. And this is what my handwriting looked like as a 4th, 5th grader. So that series inspired a lot of my early writing. You might be able to guess the inspiration for this one, Where the Wild Rose Grows. I'm trying to hear answers from Michigan right now. I hear Where the Red Fern Grows, Where the Wild Things Are. Those 2 titles probably inspired the title of this book. So I would borrow titles from books that I was reading. I would borrow characters, storylines, and that's how I taught myself to write. I have one more to show you, one more story to show you. You can guess this at home. This one is called Journey into Orange. And it's about a group of kids who fly around in a giant orange. And it was inspired by another flying fruit story. I'll let you guess at home. So anyway, that's how I taught myself to write. So those of you that love to write, and I know there are a lot of writers among this group today, the best way to do that is really to take the books you love and to use them to teach you how to write and to inspire you.
All right. And we have someone here who wants to know, where do you find inspiration, or is there a location where you are the most inspired?
I would say the best inspiration is from schools, to be honest. I spend a lot of time in schools as an author, at least before COVID. And I think it's 4 of the 7 books I've written were inspired by something that I saw or heard in a school. All Shook Up, which is about Elvis impersonators, was inspired by a poster I saw in a school that they were going to have a school dance, and they had invited an Elvis impersonator to perform. And I looked at this poster and thought, why? Is this maybe a parent who's an Elvis impersonator? And imagine if you were in middle school and your dad was an Elvis impersonator. That would make a great story. And so that was started me on the journey of this book. Jump Into the Sky, another novel of mine, that was inspired by a conversation I heard at lunch. So schools are great. You should pay attention in school for, listen up for those ideas.
Fantastic. All right. And some people want to know, why did you pick Joey for a name?
It was tough to name Joey. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones that I tried. And off the top of my head, I can't remember. Every character is different in terms of naming them. Sometimes the name I use the same name all the way through the writing process. And sometimes the character's name changes, doesn't quite fit. April's name was really tough. She was Maya, Myra, Mia. She had a ton of different names in the different drafts. It just takes me a while sometimes to get to know a character well enough to figure out this is the name that fits them. And I have in that file cabinet where I showed you the little mouse note, in that file cabinet, I keep files of names. So anytime I see an interesting name in the newspaper or I hear an interesting name, I will jot it down as a future character.
All right. We have someone who wants to know, what do you like to do when you're not writing?
Well, kind of like Joey, I'm a big fan of art. And so I love to paint and draw. I keep an art journal. I don't know if I have the art journal here to show you. But I like to, sketch and draw and paint. I love theater. I like to go to the parks, obviously, and walk since we, lived here. And I love to travel around the world when we have the chance to do that.
All right. And people want to know, just how many books have you written?
I've only written 7, but I've been a published author for about 20 years. So, some authors, if they had been writing for 20 years, they would have 20 books. But like I said, I'm kind of slow. So I have 7 books for the last 20 years of work. And I'm looking at writing a couple more. I have some ideas here. I haven't quite decided yet. Ideas are sort of like airplanes. They keep kind of circling in your imagination until one finally comes into land. So right now I'm kind of at the stage of just the ideas are just circling. I have an idea for a fantasy novel. I have an idea for an environmental novel and an idea for a humor book. So I haven't quite decided which one it's going to be yet.
All right. Melanie wants to know, how do you get a book published?
Well, it's surprisingly enough, there is no age limit. So any of you that want to get published, there's, it's a possibility. The only thing to be published as a young person, you have to write as good as an adult. So there are not many young people who have the same skills as an adult, but there have been, teen writers published. But anyway, the process is these days is you have to write a really, really, really good manuscript that you've rewritten about 12 times. And then what you do is most authors now, they have an agent. So it's just like sports players. We approach an agent with our book, hopefully the best thing we've ever written. And if the agent likes that book, they will decide to take you on as a client. And then once you're an agent's client, and you don't pay anything for that, they're just trying to find good authors. Then once they have your manuscript and they really like it, then they're the ones that take it to the publishers and they try to find somebody that's interested in publishing your book. So mostly I deal with, my agent, not necessarily with ever contacting a publishing house. But like I said, no age limit. There have been teenagers who've been published. I started when I was 13 trying to get published, but I didn't have success at getting published until I was 33. So, it took a long time to become a good enough writer to be published.
All right. And we have someone here who wants to know, why do you love writing?
It's just who I am. I mean, I think that especially those of you that are writers will understand it's just something I can't not do. Even if I wasn't, published, I've always kept a journal ever since 5th grade. So every day I write down the things that have happened to me, and I just have to do that. I mean, nobody will ever publish. I'll never get those published, but I just like to get my thoughts on paper. And I love stories. I was lucky to grow up in a family where people told stories. And so I just love listening and collecting those stories. And so I guess it's just who I am.
All right. So I had that question, do you keep a diary or a journal? So yeah, obviously you do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And do you have a favorite author or an author who inspires you the most?
I would say Catherine Patterson, who's still a writer today. She was a writer that I read as a kid. She wrote Great Gilly Hopkins, Bridge to Terabithia. I know some of you probably have read her books. What I admire about her is that she was an author that was one of the first to tackle sometimes tough or difficult subjects in her books for youth. And I admire her courage for doing that as years ago before that was in books. So she tackled grief. She wrote about the challenges that a child who was in foster care was facing. So those were things that weren't in books until she started writing about them. And she's had a career, a long, long career. And I admire that. She's stuck with, the book world for that long. So definitely Catherine Patterson. Of course, I also admire J.K. Rowling, because I just don't know how she does the book. I just don't know how she keeps those worlds in her imagination and creates all of the things that she creates. So I would love to have tea with her someday.
Oh, you and me both.
And I'll invite all of you, all the Battle of the Books kids. If I get invited, I'll make sure that you're part of that.
So it sounds like you've always loved writing. Even when you were little, did you know you wanted to be a writer, or was there ever a time when you thought you might want to be something else?
I think I always wanted to be a writer, but I never thought it would really happen. My grandpa, obviously, the note that I showed, he believed that this would happen, but I had no idea how this, worked. There were no writers in my family. So, I dreamed it, but didn't really know how it would work. So I had other ideas. I thought about being a veterinarian, even though I can't stand, the sight of blood, but, I thought, and being an artist, those kind of things. But writing has always been there as, what I wanted to do in life.
And Jalen wants to know does writing ever make you tired, or do you ever get tired of writing?
You guys are asking great questions. I said they're just flying in here in the chat. I can see them running down the line here. Definitely. The part of writing that makes me the most tired is when I'm trying to get the story on paper the first time. That takes a lot of brain power. And so usually I just set a little goal for myself, like I'm just going to try to write 2 pages, when I'm first starting on a story, because after 2 pages, I am exhausted. And sometimes it takes me all day to just write those 2 pages. So that part of writing is exhausting, and I take a lot of breaks. So then once I get all those words on paper, and then it's really fun to move them around and make the story better and better. So that part isn't as tiring, but yes, definitely writing the first draft is tiring. Oh, I can show you one more thing. Here, sometimes when I need a little break, from just trying to get the story on paper, I'll do brainstorming. So here's the brainstorm for Joey Bird. So you can see, where I'm coming up with what he's going to sound like and look like. These are really fun to do. So sometimes this is a little break for me to do the brainstorm. And then when I plan a story, this is how I plan it. I use Post-it notes, and I write all my ideas down on Post-it notes, and then I try to arrange them into beginning, middle, and end, so that I have an idea of where I'm going with the story.
And
so that's fun.
When you write the book, do you write it in order, or do you write chapters out of order and then piece them together?
I'm kind of unusual in that I only will write from beginning to end. And I'm that kind of a reader too. I never skip around. I know some of you may go to the end maybe and then read the rest, or maybe you skip around. I cannot do that. I have to read beginning to end. And the same thing with writing. I cannot go out of sequence, which is really, I think I could be a lot faster if I, if I was able to skip around.
All right. And we have people asking specific questions about the books. Do you have a favorite character out of all the books you've written?
My favorite character, okay, I hope all the other ones don't start yelling at this point, but I would say Harrison, who's the main character in Trouble Don't Last, would be my all-time favorite character. Second favorite would probably be the Elvis dad, Jerry Denny, in All Shook Up.
Oh, that's great. And what was the inspiration for Trouble Don't Last?
I was working for a museum, and I was also teaching at the time that, and I realized that there weren't any books that talked about what the experience of a runaway was like. There were books about people who helped runaways, but not about a specific runaways experiences. And so I started digging around to see if I could find, information about that, and then just got so interested in what I was finding that I decided to write a story based on some of the stories that I was reading. So that was really, and I love journey stories. I've always read them. That was one of my favorite types of books to read as a child, even though I would never take a courageous journey myself. I love reading about people who take a courageous journey. So that was the start of that book. If you like a book that's a page turner, definitely check out Trouble Don't Last if you haven't read it.
Yeah, we have some people here want to know if you'll ever write in a different genre, like perhaps an autobiography or a scary story.
Well, I hardly ever say never. I could probably say I won't write a scary story because I don't read them because I'm easily scared. Although I read the Graveyard book recently, and that one scared me. So I think probably I won't write a scary book. But I definitely would love to write some nonfiction, creative nonfiction, and I'm still trying to write a fantasy book. So that's one of my goals, just to try to do that.
All right. We have some of our team members here asking questions. Caitlin wants to know, what is your favorite design that Joey did in your book?
Oh, goodness. Which was my favorite? I love the waves. I love what Joey said in the story about how, you can't have it, an imaginary fire unless you have an imaginary way to put it out. I may have been the only one that found that line really fun, but that I just loved writing that and just imagining him, the way he saw the world and to say that. So yeah, I love the waves.
And we have one of our captains here, Captain Maya. I'm going to bring her in so she can just ask you her question.
Okay. Hi, Captain Maya.
Hi. So I was wondering, why is Veena from India?
Mainly because in some of the research that I did, I loved the idea of I think it's called Rangoli is the way to pronounce it. Anyway, the large designs that are created outside of Indian houses for certain cultural events. And reading about the third eye, I thought that really connected. One of the themes of the story is the idea of seeing the world from different perspectives and different points of view. And I thought there were some elements of Indian culture that really fit that idea of trying to see with different eyes. So that's why Veena gave me by putting Veena in the story, she gave me the chance to talk about that.
Oh, wonderful. I know we are so grateful for you offering up your time to be here with us today at Battle of the Books for our championship round. When everyone ends up being a champion, I'm looking in the chat here, and I looks like we have a lot of our team players who are aspiring writers themselves. What advice do you have for people at their age that you wish you had been given at that age when you were trying to be a writer?
Well, I think the main piece of advice is to find yourself someone that's a reading partner. So if you can find another writer in your family or among your group of friends and somebody that's willing to read your writing, it's really important. Like my grandpa was my reader. It's important to have someone to write for. So that's number one. I would say read as much, and you guys are already doing this, but read as much as you can, because right now this is such an important time because you're filling the well of your imagination that you'll use for the rest of your life. So in order to be a really successful, talented, imaginative author, you have to be putting as much as you can in your imagination now. So read everything, even books that make different genres that maybe you haven't, read before, so that you get those in your imagination. And the third thing I would say is try to send your writing out in the world. Try to write letters to the editor. There's magazines that you can send your writing to. On my website, I have lists of places that accept writing by students. And so occasionally try to get it published, but mostly just try to become a good writer right now and find an audience to write for. And believe in your talent. I mean, I think writers know that you guys know you have a storytelling gift. And so just like any gift, you have to nurture that gift and believe in it and keep it going. You know, it's kind of like a little flame that no matter what happens in your life, you have to keep that little flame going.
All right. Well, I'm going to do one more question here. And since her internet dropped off and then she got herself back on here, we're going to use Addie. Addie, are you there? Oh, can you unmute yourself, Addie?
Yeah.
Hey, Addie.
My question is it okay to borrow names, ideas, and places from other books you've read?
That's a good question to ask. It would not be okay if you're going to try to publish that, right? You know, publish your writing. So if you're going to take, you know, another author's ideas, titles, characters, and try to send that out, you know, to try to get it published, that wouldn't be okay. But if you're practicing writing, you know, if you're trying to get better and better, it's absolutely okay to try to use another author's ideas as springboards for your own. It's just you can't publish that.
What if you thought of the name before you read the book? Then could I publish it?
Yeah, I mean, if it was, yeah, I mean, I think you're okay, especially if it's more common. I mean, if it's Dumbledore, probably not, but if it's, a common name, sure, you could definitely. I mean, there's always a lot of creative ideas floating out in the world. And sometimes, two people at the same time use the same idea. So sure. Thanks. Good question.
All right. Well, everyone, go ahead.
Did I get through all the questions? I'm going to finish up with a quick story for everyone.
All right. There are two more questions among the team members. Would you like to answer those very quickly?
I'll answer the last two, and then I have a little story for all of you, especially for the writers in the group.
So we'll do Madeline and Juniper. We'll start with Madeline.
Okay.
I just wanted to know, who could you relate to the most in Things and Food? Like, who's your favorite?
Probably Mr. Ulysses. I have a special fondness for custodians, and I loved the fact that he kind of knew everything that was going on and was trying to help in his own creative way. So, and I like the fact that at the end, he created the musical mop for janitors, and so he was fun. Yeah, I'd say Mr. Ulysses.
All right, and last but not least, we have Juniper.
I wanted to know, could you tell me all of your books? Because they sound like really good books, what I've heard so far, and I want to read them.
Sure, I think I have most of them here. All right.
Remember, when you get these books, don't get them from Amazon. Get them from your local bookstores.
Amazon or Horizon Books, all the above. This is great. It has a little bit of math in it, but don't let that scare you off, because it's a really, especially for those of you that like to write, this will teach you another storytelling skill. This is a multi-voice story, and it's really fun to write a story from different perspectives. So this book will teach you how to do that. All right, Jump Into the Sky, which is about the first paratrooper unit in the Black paratrooper unit in the United States. Crooked River, which is a murder mystery set in Ohio. And it's the murder trial of a Chippewa Indian man. It's a two voices story. So it goes back and forth between the two voices. Trouble Don't Last, that we talked about, Underground Railroad story. The Seventh Most Important Thing, which is a story about, I can't tell you what this one's about because it has so many surprises in it that if I describe the story, I'll give away the major surprises. But it's, I will say it starts out with a crime. And of course, Things Seen from Above. I think that's all of them. I may have forgotten a book in there somewhere. I did Crooked River. Sorry, I'm talking to my husband. He's trying to help me. Oh, I forgot. All Shook Up. Elvis Impersonators.
Okay, thank you.
So if you want a funny story, Elvis Impersonators. Okay, was that the second question or was there?
That was it. And you said you had a story.
All right. So I have a story for all of you. All right. So since we've talked about Trouble Don't Last, when this book came out, my dad was one of the most excited people in Northeast Ohio because we'd never had a published book in the family before. So just like your parents were so excited about the win today, that was my dad. Anyway, he called me from the bookstore in town and he was shouting into the phone, Shelley, guess what? Your first book is in a bookstore. It's on the shelf. Okay, so you guys imagine your own book being on the shelf. and how exciting that would be. And he said, your name is on it and everything. And I'm like, Dad, I know they put authors' names on books, right? And he says, well, I just had to call and tell you that there is a problem. And then my heart kind of drops. Like, oh, what do you mean? Did they print something wrong? What's wrong with the book? And he says, no, nothing's wrong with your book. It's where the book is. And I said, well, you told me it was in the bookstore. And he says, well, it is, but it's on the shelves for kids. And I said, well, Dad, that's who I write for, you know? And he said, well, the shelves for kids are in the back corner of the bookstore. So you know those bestseller tables in the bookstore? Right at the front when you walk in, he said, I just put all of your books on the bestseller table. I'm like, Dad, you can't do that. You can't put books on the bestseller table just because you feel like it. And my dad was kind of quiet. And then he says, I think I could do whatever I want now that I'm an author's dad. So I want to thank your family members who have made you bestsellers and best readers today. I hope that all of you end up writing books that do make it on the bestseller table someday. And I want to thank you for all the work you've done for the championship. It was great to be part of the Battle of the Books. And thank you to the National Writer Series for having me here today.